Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. Today's video is going to be installation of Redhat Pacemaker cluster. Okay, so if you are not aware of clustering, what is clustering or basic about clustering, then it would be a little difficult for you to understand what I'm going to show you here. And if you are already aware and you have worked on clustering product earlier, then it will be going to helpful, I hope. Okay, and also please let me know if you wanted to understand the basic what is clustering and what is the purpose of clustering. Then please let me know in the comment section. I will probably going to help you preparing one video on that. Okay, so for now I have two nodes which is running in VMware environment. You can see here I am running a vSphere, and this is my two node where I have installed RHEL 7.2 servers, and the name of the server name, the name of the node is RSCL01, and the second one is RSCL02. Okay, so these are the node it is running. So I have open a partition here, and those are the two partition for the system. And if I just get it for hostname, it says the hostname here, and let me do a hostname CTL, and you can able to see that information about 7.2. and also if I go back to my node 1 and run hostname CTL, I will be able to see it is 7.2. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to install two node of cluster where it will going to act as a high availability, and I will also going to show you the prerequisite, because without the prerequisite, if you try to install or configure your cluster, it may going to fail, because there are many things which you need to ensure that they have been set and they have been configured. So let me bring up my file here. I have some basic steps here which I have provided. The first one is the disable IP tables and firewall, and second thing is update the host entries and modify the YAML repository. Okay, so let me go to the other node here and just do the first thing, which is IP tables. So IP tables needs to be stopped. So here you can see there is no rules, and your SE Linux, so it is SE status. If I do this, I can see here it is disabled. Okay, so you have to ensure those two settings are disabled. And if you wanted to use IP tables and you don't want to disable it, then probably you need to allow those port which is required by this clustering. Okay, so better you just disable it. And second thing is your host file. So if you do not have DNS and DNS is not functional for your system, then you must need to update your IP and hostname in this file. So that I have ensured that this is done. And if your environment having a DNS server and your IP address is resolving from DNS, then it will not going to affect you. So better you should have a local entry here, and also to have an entry in DNS. So since I do not have a DNS service, I have updated locally. And the next steps is to update the YAML repository. So you have to ensure that the packages which you are going to install, those packages are available in your repository, or you have to subscribe your system with RHN. So since I do not have subscription, I just have locally configured my YAML repository. So to check that, I just need to run YAML repo list, and if I run this command, I can able to see here I have 4620 packages. Okay, and how I configure this repository. So to that check that, I just wanted to show you those who are not familiar how to configure the repository. Okay, so if you just go to this file /etc yum.repos.d, and there is one file I have created, and the extension should be repo, okay, dot repo. So if I get this file, you can able to see I have given a name here for this and the base file where it is located inside this ISO directory, and it is enabled and GPG check is disabled. Okay, so you have to ensure that your repository is configured. So if I go to OS ISO, and here I can able to see one directory called package, and inside that there are many packages which is OS related, and inside this directory I have a directory called add-on. So if I go to this directory and ls it, you will be able to see there is a directory called high availability and resilient storage. So inside this your cluster packages which is available here, and those packages will going to require to install or configure your pacemaker cluster. Okay, so please ensure your repository is configured, and the next part is installation of packages. So those packages which is required. So the first packages is about PCS, which will give you a GUI interface. So that is the reason you need these packages, and pacemaker, which is your main cluster packages, and it will also call as a messaging server, and which is CoroSync. So it will provide that it is going to provide you that information, and fencing agent. So you are going to need a fence device, or you are going to you need to configure a fencing in order to function your cluster, because without fencing there is no use of clustering. So this fencing agent package will provide you fencing options, whatever the options you can use. And the other one is LVM2 cluster. So that is going to provide you about your the CLVMD and also the DLM mechanism. Okay, and those who are not aware of CLVMD, DLM, probably I am going to explain it later in my coming videos. And the resource agent, which is required, because without the resource agent you won't be able to configure the resources. So that is why this package is required. And there is some Python packages which is required to use by PCS to provide you a web interface. And if you are planning to use GFS2 file system, then you need this package. So for now, what I'm going to do, I'm going to use or install all these packages. So let me install it on my first node. So I just initiated this on first node, and let me do that same thing on my second node. So it is going to install my packages, but something is not correct here. It is saying no PCS available, no package pacemaker available. Let me check on my this system. It seems here it is good. Here it is not saying. Okay, so I think I have to do something else here. Let me just cancel. It is not terminating. Let me just wait until that terminate. But in my first node it is fine, it seems, and it is going to install the packages which I have mentioned. Okay, so let me just try to kill this service, but something is not good. Let me take a duplicate session, and okay, I got the console now, and let me see whether there is any processes running with regards to yum. If it is there, then I have to probably kill it. So here it is not there. I think I did not create the repo for this ISO, so let me just create it. That's why it is unable to see those packages. So it will going to take hardly 2 or 3 minutes to creating that repository. Okay, so let me go to my this system. It is still trying to install, and I don't need this console. Let me close this console. Okay, so here you can see there are hint description. You can see there are 6 packages which I have mentioned is going to install, and there are additional plus 58 dependency which is going to install, and you can see those Ruby packages which is required, and that is going to install. And there are many different types of fencing device which is available. Either one of it you can use based on your environment. Okay, and see here you can see DLM package and corosing is also going to install. Okay, so let me just do yes here to start the installation. And my installation of cluster packages has been started. It is a bit slow, I'm not sure why it is, though I have 2 GB of RAM in this system. And my package installation is ongoing and it is about to complete. And let me see the other system where I have started to create a repository and it is still trying to create the repository. That means I need to wait. Okay, so currently it is verifying the old packages which is installed. So I'm good with the first node. So the package is installed and let me see what is the next step. So the next step is, let me get it here. So the next step is to set the password for user HA cluster, and the password should be never expire. Why? Because this users which I am going to use, that HA cluster, is going to communicate the node. Each node will check the other node whether that is active or not, and it will try to communicate. And this user only requires whenever you are using PCSD service or that web interface. Okay, you can later, once you have set up your cluster, and you can later disable that service and you can probably get rid of it, and that is not going to require in order to use your cluster. Okay, this is only going to provide you a web interface. Okay, so to never expire, why? Because for example, you have set up this cluster today and after 6 months your user is expired and you're trying to use that GUI interface and you won't be able to access it. That is why it is always recommended to set that user as non-expiry. Okay, and if you are familiar about RHEL 6 clustering, which is a Conga project provided, and there is a service called Luci and Ricky. So if you are aware of it, then you might understand that there we had something called Luci. So and which was providing a web interface, and to communicate the servers we used to use Ricky, and the port number was 51. Okay, so those are the port number which we used to use. So here, instead of Ricky users, we are going to use a user called HA cluster. Okay, so there is a difference between the RHEL 6 and RHEL 7. Okay, so now if I do a grep HA cluster and do a password, I can be able to see here the user has been created, and let me set the password HA cluster. I simply giving as a Redhat, and let me see the other node whether my repository has been created. So my repository has been created in another node, and let me try to install the packages here, and let's see this time. Wow, so I'm not sure why it is still unable to see the packages for PCS Pacemaker, LVM2 cluster and resource agent. So let me just check later, probably once this installation is finished, and let me go to the other node here. So, and also to check whether your password, let me just clear the screen and do a chase -l HA cluster, and here you can see the password expiry is never, account expiry is never, and it will never going to inactive. So that is what it is. And let me fix this. So I'm going to pause this video for some time because I just need to fix that repository why it is unable to find that packages, and let me come back once that is fixed. Okay, so I have fixed that repository issue. Actually, I had missed some packages to copy when I have copied those packages from my DVD, so that is why those packages were unable to fetch and it was not showing in my repository. So now it is fine, and if I try to install it, and it is able to find those packages, and you can see there are six packages which is going to install, and plus 58 packages which is dependency is going to be installed here. So let's go back to the other system here, and let me see the other next step which is we need to follow. Okay, so meanwhile the installation is going on the other node, we can go through the steps here. So we have set the password for HA cluster, and now the services. So now this server installed the PCS service, and also if I let me check whether that services are running or not, status, and if I do PCS service, and the service is not running, so let me just start the service. Start. Okay, so now I have started the PCS service, and if I check the service, and it is running, and notice there is something called starting PCS GUI and remote configuration interface. Okay, so now that means the PCS daemon or service that is going to provide you a web interface. So how I'm going to access that? So let me open my web interface here, and let's do a https : and my server IP address is 192.168.169.135 is my IP, and there is a port that we have to use. That port is 2224. Okay, so if I run this, and it is asking for my, and I have to accept here. Okay, so it is login, and it is going to give me a prompt for high availability dashboard console, and it is still trying to loading. And let me see meanwhile my installation is done or not. Okay, so my installation is done, and notice here my PCSD service systemctl PCSD dot status, sorry, PCSD service, and I want to check the status here. It is not running. So let me go to here, and you can able to see there is a nice dashboard which is saying high availability management. Okay, and the username is HA cluster, and password is Redhat, which I have set as Redhat. Okay, so it is pretty slow, it is taking a little time, and meanwhile what I am going to do is I am going to set the password for HA cluster on other node. Okay, so let me set it. So I set the password as Redhat, and it is still trying to loading. And here you can see the dashboard, and currently there is nothing running, and you can see manage cluster, and you can see all information. There is no server information, nothing is running here, and you can add a cluster from here saying create new, and you can add the servers. Okay, so I'm not going to do it through web interface. Instead I'm going to go with the command line. So how will I do that? Let me bring up that installation.txt file again. Okay, so here now I have set the password for both the node, and let me just enable the service. so that when server is reboot, this service should come up automatically. And this I need to run it on other system as well. I'm just need to run on node 2. Okay, so now the next command is to authenticate. Okay, so how we will tell that in this cluster, okay, in this cluster it is going to be run how many nodes. So here I'm going to run 2 nodes. The first node is RSCL01 and RSCL02, right? So that is why I'm just going to authenticate. So you can just probably run like this, or if you do not provide -u, it will going to ask you for username. So let's do it like this. And it is taking a little time, and let me see whether I have enabled this PCSD, but I haven't started this service. So to communicate from RSCL01 to 02, this service should be running, otherwise it will not communicate. So let me check the status now, and it is running. So probably it will be able to communicate now, and it is able to communicate, and it is asking for me the username. So let me provide the username here, and the password is Redhat. Okay, so here you can see the both node is currently authorized and it is connected. So next step is, okay, so the next step is to set up a cluster, right? So how will you set up the first initial setup of your cluster? So I need to run this command, and the name of the cluster, this is my cluster name, okay, and you have to provide like this: PCS cluster setup --start --name, cluster name, and the node name. So once you run this, it will communicate to other system, and it will going to start your main services, which is Pacemaker and CoreSync. So currently it was stopping, and it is going to start it, and you can see the message here, it is started, and here also you can see it is started, and everything seems to be fine, right? So now the services is already started. So next step is, here it says about the cluster start all. So if you run this command, irrespective of nodes, how many nodes you are running, for example in your cluster you are running 3 nodes of cluster. So if you run this command, PCS cluster start -all, it will going to start the services on all the 3 nodes, which is part of this test cluster. And currently I am running 2 node, so if I run this command, it will going to start this service on both the node. But I don't need to run this command, because you can see I have mentioned here start, so that is why it is already going to start here, and the packages is already the services is already started, and you can see those are the services, it is already started. And here you can see the Pacemaker service and the CoreSync services, which is already started. In order to double check, let me just check system CTL status Pacemaker, and you can see the service is running. And also for CoreSync, if I just wanted to see, and the CoreSync service is also running. So here you can see one warning about Stoneit, because Stoneit is not configured yet, and it is giving us error saying that we need to have Stoneit as well, otherwise your cluster is not going to function properly, because without Stoneit there is no use of using cluster, right? So anyway, I'm going to show you in my next video how to configure the Stoneit. Okay, fine. So now, so let me clear the screen, and to check the status of your cluster, we can simply run PCS cluster status. Okay, sorry, I think it is PCS status. Wow, I think I missed a here. Okay, so if you run this command, you would be able to see the cluster is online and PCSD service is running on both the node, and the services are running, and whether it is disabled or enable, those information you can able to see here, right? So this is how you have to do a basic configuration of your cluster. The other command you can see crm_mon -r1, and likewise also you can see those are the two node which is running, and my DC is RSCL01, and the DC, what is DC, is stand for designated coordinator. Okay, so I have prepared some videos for Suse HA cluster, okay, that is similar to Redhat Pacemaker cluster, and those link I have given in this video in description field. Okay, please go through those links to understand more about how pacemaker or chorusing communicate each and every node, and what is DC. Okay, and if you still not sure, please let me know in comment section. I will try to explain you about all these components. Okay, so for now I think the first initial cluster setup we have done it. So let me see if there is any other steps. So just to enable it, I think already enable, so that whenever system is boot up, those cluster service should come up. So I have enabled it on both the node, and if I just go to other node here and run crm_mon r1, I can able to see my node is running. So, and also if I just go here and let me just refresh my web interface to see whether my cluster is showing or not. I'm sure it will not going to show because I have to add that cluster manually here. So this is basically a dashboard. Okay, so from this dashboard you can manage or configure or monitor your cluster. Okay, so multiple cluster you can manage it. For example, in your environment you are running 3 different cluster node, 3 different environment. The first one is test cluster, second one is development, and third one is production. So what you can do, you can install the PCSD services in any node. It is not mandatory that you have to install all the packages and configure your cluster. So it is just a package, the PCSD packages. That package you have to install on any of the Red Hat system and start the service and access that server through 222 and from here you can add those cluster node, and you can manage all those cluster node from one centralized dashboard. So for now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add my node which is test cluster. Okay, so cluster name is test cluster, and my node name is, instead of node, probably I'll give my IP in case it is unable to resolve my IP. So let me just give the IP here 35, and the other node is 36, and just create cluster. And let me see my node, the 2 node cluster, and the cluster name is test cluster, whether it is going to able to fetch that information and able to see that information in this dashboard here. Okay, and enter the password for HA cluster, and the password is Red Hat for HA cluster username, and let me add those, and let's authenticate. I believe it is working in background, and let me see in advanced option what are the options I have. Okay, let me just, and it seems it is trying to communicate my cluster test node here, this 2 node, and here it is still loading and it is taking a little time. Unable to create new cluster, it is already exists on one or more run PCS, destroy all nodes configuration. Okay, so let me do it in other way. So the other way is add as existing cluster. Okay, so currently I have already running, so let me try to add the first node. It should be able to fetch the information, and let me try to add the first node here, add existing. Basically the create new is about where you are going to configure a new cluster, so that is what it is. So currently I have already started the services and the cluster, 2 node of cluster is already running, so I'm just adding them into this dashboard. That is why I just given the IP here for my first node, and it should be able to fetch the information, and it should be able to give the information about the node, how many nodes are running, and the services which is running under those 2 nodes. And it is loading, and here it is. So here you can see it is already taken, and the name it is given here, the test cluster which I have given. And if you wanted to see the description or more about this cluster, just select and click on the system, and you would be able to see more information about this cluster node. So here right now only 2 nodes, and the resource, there is no resources, only 0 resource it is saying, and I can be able to expand it. So it is still loading, and it is bit slow. And here you can see much more information about these 2 nodes. So here is my node where the services are running, and you can start, stop, standby, or configure fencing from here itself, and you can able to see the which are the processes are running, and how many resources. Currently I don't have any resources, and if you have any fence configured, those fence information you would be able to see. And individually you can see the information here. You can click on resources to see your resources. Currently I don't have any resources, no fencing device, and the cluster properties. So I will going to probably explain a little bit about what is no quorum policy and what is Stoneit and other important options. Okay, so for now I think for this video that's it. That is what I had for this video. I'm going to discuss more and more about Redhat Pacemaker cluster in my coming video. So thank you so much for watching this video, and also please subscribe my channel. It is very important. Subscribing is nothing but just like you do in your Facebook page. If you like some page and you just hit like on Facebook page, right? So it is similar to that, and it is definitely going to beneficial for you. Why? Because the next time when I'm going to upload any video, it is regarding cluster or for other topics, you will have a notification, right? And you would be able to know that there is one new video has been uploaded, and that video may help you. Okay, so please subscribe my channel. It is very important. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a good day.